Picture this, a 19-year-old college dropout working from his dorm room, armed with nothing but a screwdriver, a vision, and an unshakable belief that he could revolutionize an entire industry. Fast forward 3 decades, and that same young man has built one of the world's largest technology companies, survived a devastating public failure, and emerged stronger than ever before. This is the extraordinary story of Michael Dell, a tale of triumph, catastrophic failure, redemption, and the brutal lessons learned in the transformation from a brilliant founder into a true leader. Welcome to Legacy Book Insight. I'm here to take you through one of the most gripping business memoirs ever written. Play nice but win. A CEO's journey from founder to leader. Today, we're diving deep into Michael Dell's raw, unfiltered account of building Dell Technologies, losing control of his own company, and fighting an epic battle to reclaim it. This isn't just another success story. It's a masterclass in resilience, strategic thinking, and the painful evolution that every entrepreneur must undergo to become a leader worthy of their vision. The humble beginnings, from dorm room to empire. Our story begins in 1984 in a cramped University of Texas dorm room where 19-year-old Michael Dell was dissecting computers like a surgeon studying anatomy. While his classmates were attending parties and cramming for exams, Dell was discovering something revolutionary. He could build better computers than IBM and sell them directly to customers for half the price. The traditional model was broken. Retailers were marking up computers by 30 to 40%, adding layers of cost without adding value. Dell saw through this inefficiency like a hawk spotting prey from thousands of feet above. With just $1,000 in startup capital, Dell began what would become known as the Dell Direct model. No middlemen, no inflated retail markups, just high-quality, customized computers shipped directly from manufacturer to customer. The numbers were staggering. In his first year, Dell's company generated $6 million in revenue. By the time he was 23, he had taken Dell Computer public, making him one of the youngest CEOs in Fortune 500 history. But success, as Dell would soon learn, was just the beginning of his real education. The direct model revolution. Dell's direct model wasn't just a business strategy. It was a complete reimagining of how technology companies could operate. Traditional manufacturers built computers in massive quantities, hoping demand would match supply. Dell flipped this equation entirely. Every Dell computer was built to order. Customers could customize their machines online, choosing everything from processor speed to memory configuration. This meant zero inventory waste, faster cash flow, and the ability to incorporate the latest technology immediately. The model was so efficient that Dell often got paid by customers before they had to pay their suppliers. This negative cash conversion cycle became a powerful engine for growth, allowing the company to expand rapidly without constantly raising capital. Dell's supply chain became legendary in business schools worldwide. The company could deliver a custom-built computer to your doorstep faster than competitors could ship pre-built machines from their warehouses. The storm clouds gather, but success breeds complacency, and complacency breeds vulnerability. As Dell Computer grew from startup to corporation, cracks began appearing in the foundation. The technology landscape was shifting beneath Dell's feet. Consumers were gravitating toward laptops, tablets, and smartphones. The PC market that had made Dell billions was contracting. Meanwhile, competitors like Apple were creating products that weren't just functional, but emotionally compelling. Dell found himself caught in what business theorists call the innovator's dilemma. The very efficiency that had made Dell dominant in PCs became a liability in a world demanding breakthrough innovation and design excellence. The company's stock price began a painful descent. Dell's board, once supportive, grew restless and critical. Investors questioned whether the founder who had built this empire was the right person to lead it into the future. Then came the most devastating blow of all. Dell realized he might have to step aside as CEO of his own company. The painful transition. In 2004, after 20 years of leading the company he had created, Michael Dell made one of the most difficult decisions of his life. He stepped down as CEO, transitioning to chairman, while Kevin Rollins took operational control. This wasn't a voluntary sabbatical. This was an acknowledgement that Dell, despite his genius as a founder, had not yet developed the leadership skills necessary to guide a massive corporation through fundamental industry transformation. The transition was brutal. Dell watched helplessly as his company's market share eroded, its stock price plummeted, and its culture deteriorated. The direct model that had once seemed invincible was being disrupted by cloud computing, mobile devices, and changing customer preferences. Dell describes this period as the darkest chapter of his professional life. He was a founder watching his life's work slowly crumble, knowing that he bore significant responsibility for its decline. The education of a leader. But Michael Dell didn't retreat into bitterness or blame. Instead, he embarked on one of the most intensive leadership development journeys ever documented in business literature. He studied under executive coaches, dove deep into leadership theory, and most importantly, began the painful process of honest self-reflection. Dell realized that the skills that make someone a brilliant entrepreneur are not automatically the same skills needed to lead a large, complex organization. Founders are typically visionaries, risk-takers, and decisive individual contributors. Leaders, however, must inspire others, build systems, and create cultures that can operate effectively even when they're not in the room. Dell began developing what he calls learning loops, systematic approaches to gathering feedback, analyzing results, and continuously improving performance. He studied how great leaders communicated, how they built trust, and how they navigated complex organizational dynamics. The comeback strategy. In 2007, Dell executed one of the most dramatic CEO returns in corporate history. But this wasn't the same Michael Dell who had stepped down 3 years earlier. This was a transformed leader who had learned to balance his founder's instincts with mature leadership capabilities. Dell's comeback strategy was built on 3 fundamental pillars. First, he had to acknowledge and fix the cultural problems that had developed during his absence. The company had become bureaucratic and risk-averse. Decision-making had slowed to a crawl. Dell implemented what he called direct leadership, cutting through organizational layers to connect directly with employees and customers. Second, Dell had to rebuild the company's innovation engine. The PC market was mature, but opportunities existed in servers, storage, and enterprise solutions. Dell began acquiring companies and building capabilities in high-growth technology segments. Third, and most importantly, Dell had to prove that he had evolved as a leader. This meant surrounding himself with strong executives, delegating effectively, and creating systems that could scale beyond his personal involvement. The ultimate test, going private. But Dell's greatest leadership test was yet to come. By 2012, it became clear that Dell needed to make fundamental changes that would be impossible as a public company. The quarterly earnings pressure and short-term thinking of public markets were preventing the long-term investments necessary for transformation. Dell made a decision that shocked the business world. He would take his own company private in the largest technology buyout in history. The battle for Dell's future became an epic corporate drama. Activist investors led by Carl Icahn fought the privatization, arguing that Dell was undervaluing the company. Competing bidders emerged. Legal challenges mounted. The process stretched for months, with Dell's future hanging in the balance. Dell had to risk everything: his personal fortune, his reputation, his life's work, on his belief that he could transform the company if freed from public market constraints. The privatization ultimately succeeded, but at enormous personal cost. Dell invested virtually his entire net worth into the transaction, betting everything on his ability to execute a successful transformation. Transformation and emergence. What happened next validates Dell's evolution as a leader. Freed from quarterly earnings pressures, Dell Computer began one of the most comprehensive corporate transformations in business history. The company invested heavily in research and development, particularly in enterprise technologies like cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. Dell acquired EMC Corporation for $67 billion, creating Dell Technologies and instantly becoming one of the world's largest technology companies. But more importantly, Dell demonstrated that he had learned to lead through others. He built strong management teams, created clear accountability systems, and developed a culture focused on long-term value creation rather than short-term results. The transformation wasn't just operational, it was personal. Dell learned to balance his natural intensity with empathy and patience. He developed better listening skills and became more collaborative in his decision-making approach. Key leadership lessons. Dell's journey offers profound lessons for anyone aspiring to leadership, whether in business or other domains. First, recognize that founding success doesn't automatically translate to leadership success. The skills required to start something are different from those needed to scale and sustain it. Great leaders are continuously learning and adapting. Second, embrace feedback and criticism as gifts rather than attacks. Dell's willingness to step aside when he wasn't the right CEO for that moment in his company's history demonstrated extraordinary self-awareness and humility. Third, understand that leadership is ultimately about enabling others to achieve their potential. Dell's transformation from a brilliant individual contributor to an effective organizational leader required him to shift focus from personal achievement to collective success. Fourth, develop systems and processes that can operate effectively without your constant involvement. Dell learned to build what he calls institutional muscle, capabilities that exist within the organization rather than depending entirely on individual personalities. The daily application. So how do we apply Dell's lessons to our daily lives, whether we're leading companies, teams, or simply trying to be better versions of ourselves? Start by developing brutal self-awareness. Regularly seek feedback from people you trust, and be willing to hear difficult truths about your performance and impact. Create what Dell calls learning loops, systematic ways of gathering input, analyzing results, and continuously improving. Focus on building systems rather than just achieving individual victories. Ask yourself, if you were unavailable for a month, would the things you're responsible for continue functioning effectively? If not, you're not leading, you're just doing. Invest in developing others around you. Dell learned that his success as a leader was ultimately measured not by his personal achievements, but by the collective success of his organization. Make other people's success your priority. Practice long-term thinking even when facing short-term pressures. Dell's willingness to take his company private demonstrated the importance of making decisions based on long-term value creation rather than immediate gratification. The courage to reinvent. Perhaps the most powerful lesson from Dell's journey is the courage to reinvent yourself when circumstances demand it. Dell could have remained bitter about stepping down as CEO. He could have blamed others for his company's struggles. Instead, he chose the much more difficult path of honest self-examination and personal transformation. This kind of reinvention requires what Dell calls intellectual honesty, the willingness to acknowledge when your current approach isn't working and the courage to try something different. It's not easy, but it's essential for anyone who wants to lead effectively in a rapidly changing world. Dell's story reminds us that setbacks and failures aren't the end of the story. They're often the beginning of our most important chapters. The key is learning to view challenges as opportunities for growth rather than reasons for retreat. Building institutional strength. One of Dell's most important insights involves the difference between personal success and institutional success. Many founders struggle with this transition because they've built companies that depend entirely on their personal involvement and decision-making. Dell learned to create what he calls institutional muscle, systems, processes, and cultures that can deliver consistent results regardless of individual personalities. This required him to move from being indispensable to being a force multiplier for others. This lesson applies beyond business. In any leadership role, your ultimate success should be measured by how well things function when you're not there. Are you building systems and developing people, or are you creating dependency? The power of strategic patience. Dell's privatization decision demonstrates the power of what Warren Buffett calls strategic patience, the willingness to make short-term sacrifices for long-term advantage. Taking Dell private required enormous personal financial risk and years of uncertainty, but it created the freedom necessary for fundamental transformation. In our daily lives, strategic patience might mean investing time in skill development rather than pursuing immediate gratification, or building relationships and reputation rather than seeking quick wins. The key is maintaining clarity about your long-term objectives while being flexible about tactics and timing. Conclusion: the ongoing journey. Michael Dell's story is ultimately about transformation. The evolution from entrepreneur to leader, from individual contributor to institution builder, from someone who achieves success to someone who enables others to succeed. But perhaps most importantly, it's about the recognition that leadership is not a destination, but a continuous journey of learning, adapting, and growing. Dell's willingness to risk everything on his ability to learn and change reminds us that our greatest limitations are often self-imposed. The skills we lack can be developed. The weaknesses we struggle with can be addressed. The failures we experience can become the foundation for future success. As you face your own leadership challenges, remember Dell's example. Success isn't about being perfect from the beginning. It's about being willing to grow, to learn from setbacks, and to keep fighting for your vision even when the odds seem impossible. The game of business, like the game of life, isn't won by those who never fall down. It's won by those who get back up, learn from their mistakes, and emerge stronger than before. That's the ultimate message of play nice, but win. That winning isn't just about achieving your objectives. It's about becoming the kind of person capable of achieving them sustainably and with integrity. Your leadership journey is just beginning. The question isn't whether you'll face setbacks and challenges. You will. The question is whether you'll respond to them like Michael Dell, with courage, humility, and an unshakable commitment to continuous growth. The choice, as always, is yours. If this deep dive into Michael Dell's transformation resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to Legacy Book Insight for more life-changing lessons from the world's most influential books. Hit that notification bell and let me know in the comments which leadership challenge you're facing right now. Remember, great leaders aren't born. They're forged in the crucible of experience, failure, and the relentless pursuit of becoming better than they were yesterday. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building your legacy. Thank you for watching.